Welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast, where we explore therapy, Kundalini yoga, and all things holistic wellness. I'm Hannah Zachney, LMFT, International Retreat Leader, and Curious Human. Whether you're tuning into us via social media or any of the major podcast platforms, we're so grateful to have you here. Here's to opening our hearts and exploring life together. Welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. Today is super fun for me because we got Kate Kohagen here with me, and we have circled around each other for years now. Years. I met Kate on our yoga mats. We did class next to each other one day, and I loved her vibe. She motivated me the whole class, and then afterward, I just introduced myself, and we got to talking, and we've been friends ever since. Yes. So we've collaborated both with business. We've shared some personal time together, and I've been up to her facility several times. She has a ranch, which I'll tell you more about in a moment, but lots of animals. And I've always had such a fascination with horses. They terrify me as much as they intrigue me. So we've played around with that a little bit, and truly, I just look forward to everything that's still on our path. I know we're not close to done with each other. That's right. So from a professional standpoint, Kate is an equestrian and fitness professional by education and industry titles, founder of The Ranch at Hidden Oaks, educational and animal sanctuary, and it is indeed that. Also, just the girl with hay in her hair at the grocery store having a heart-to-heart with a fellow mom. Which is so true. You're just a relatable human on top of doing all these amazing things. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You've always stood out to me ever since I did see you on the yoga mat, and you have always inspired me because you radiate everything that I also want to radiate. So it's been fun to learn from you and be a part of your, community and orbiting and
yeah. Other things. Namaste. Yeah, and Kate has been a guest for my Heart Wide Open Women's Wellness membership and shared some things there. And we got to get those women up there to your place too. I know we have talked about that.
Yes.
So lots of things.
Lots of things.
Yeah. So when I say up to there, could you just share what the ranch is and what is it exactly that you do? You have so many aspects to your business, which I think it's part of why we relate to each other too, because we just want to do it all and experience it all and share it all. So could you line it out for us?
Yes. So the ranch at Hidden Oaks is right off of Highway 49 in El Dorado. And it's a small acreage, but we've got a little bit of everything from our small sort of chickens, rabbits, goats, all the way up to donkeys, mules, horses, mini horses, of course. And a little bit of everything in between. We do a lot of programs up there. We also do outreach. So we provide educational animal interactions to various facilities, whether it's a preschool or senior facility. We've worked with the Children's Receiving Home of Sacramento. So we just like to be able to connect people and animals.
And the animals where do they come from?
All different scenarios. Some of the animals are animals that weren't getting adopted, hard to adopt out. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people are running to the shelter to adopt pigeons, or 70-pound sulcata tortoises. Animals that are in the shelter that are harder to adopt out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have people within our community that need help that can't care for something anymore, or are donating an animal that has maybe a fabulous reputation. They're known to be very gentle. The owner cannot care for them anymore. And then they're donating them so that they're safeguarded with our program, and then able to serve because they are such a wonderful animal ambassador.
That's incredible. And since I've been there, I can say this, it's a little bit like a zoo.
Yes.
I mean, there really is such a wide variety. I'm thinking of the pigs and the little tortoises and the big ones, and you have alpacas and
Emus.
Yes.
One of the nicest professional comments I got was from one of the anchors, Molly Reel of Good Day Sacramento, and she had said, we literally have gone to many zoos, and yours is the nicest. Like, your animals are so happy, and we love the way that, they are in their enclosures, which is a huge compliment to, an animal caretaker. So it is like a little zoo, and I love it. The kids love it.
Well, and I think that's what makes it so special is your heart is in, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started, just how passionate you are about giving that care and coming from a really uniquely like caretaking space where you really want the best for the animals. And that's kind of how this whole thing started, right? Or tell me how the whole thing started.
That is a loaded question, but I will do my best to streamline. Essentially, I didn't, have I was not a farm kid growing up. I actually had kind of a rough childhood, but animals were always that source of love and something that kind of reconnected me and kept me soft, kept me from, indulging in other things. So I just have a profound gratitude for animals, and I've always been drawn to them. So as I got older, I started volunteering and just staying close to those type of learning opportunities. And eventually, one thing led to another, and the nonprofit kind of started as an accident. I didn't think I was going to be starting an animal sanctuary. I thought that was always like my retirement. Like, someday, once I have a career as a police officer and then retire, then I'll have a sanctuary. But the universe had a different plan for me.
So can you tell me a little bit more? Because I actually, in all these years, I don't think I know that. So why did you file for a nonprofit, and where did that come from?
So I was actually in the fitness industry. I've been in the fitness industry my entire life. But I felt like I needed to have a bigger career. And so I was working for a police department, and I was working on becoming a sworn officer, and I was in the application, the interview background process. And it ended up not working out. And after I'd given so much to that process, I just felt very disheartened. And my husband at the time was an officer, and he said, well, why don't you just don't worry about it for a while? I was already caretaking of a few animals, and I quickly my energy started going in that direction. And at the time I was in fitness for the Ojai Valley Inn and Spa Resort. And I happened to ask them, what are you doing with that barn over there? Like, I had just rescued a horse, and I thought maybe I could lease a small space. And they were like, for what? And so there I am in my early 20s, just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with my PowerPoint presentation about all the big things that I wanted to do. They loved it so much. They gave me the entire space, their entire riding facility and stables. And in about one summer, I had quickly filled up all the stalls, and they were sending the children of their guests to come have animal encounters. And my love for introducing people to animals, showing them how to care for them, creating those connections just grew. And I walked the steps of the nonprofit, and now we've been a nonprofit since 2011, maybe officially 2012. So we've been around a while now. We've done a couple of relocations and survived COVID, and here we are.
Yeah, I can only imagine those relocations too, with big animals.
Yes.
And we've talked over the years during like natural disaster times, when there's fires or when there's concern, and that's a real thing to be able to relocate these animals, especially if you have to do it on the ready, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So how long were you down in Ojai before you came up here?
About 10 years.
Okay. Are any of those animals still with you?
Yes. Yeah, we have some of the original crew. A couple of our horses, 2 mini horses and 2 large ones. One of our donkeys, one of our goats. Most of the others have aged out. But yeah, we still do have an original Ojai crew.
That's awesome.
We've been together a long time.
Yeah.
Some of us have, they're like my family. I've been responsible for them and have taken care of them in sickness and health for a very long time. We know each other very, very well.
Well, and this is true because when I've been with you on the property, it is, you explain what type the animal is, but then right after or with that is, this is the temperament, this is the character, this is like, you're speaking of them like they're your friends, which they are.
I'm usually confusing people because I'm referring to them as people or person or...
Yep. Yes. I've been confused in the past. I'm no longer as confused. I know what you're doing.
To me, they are people. They're people in my life. But yes, they're non-human persons.
Yeah. So what do you, I mean, I wouldn't say we all, but many people do feel grounded by animals or feel a sense of nurturing, or there's just something that like regulates our nervous system, especially animals. Like we can breathe with them a little easier than we can breathe with a human. Like we tend to we don't trust humans as much, right? So the typical human is like almost on guard until they're safe with another human, where animals you can kind of settle in a little quicker. What else would you add to why you think animals are so therapeutic, and for you specifically? Well,
so the word that comes to me is recalibrate. We can get so busy in our lives or something that we're emotionally experiencing, and animals have a way of regrounding us. There has been a lot of research about energetically and physiologically with our heart rate and our breathing, that they actually do affect us and are very regulating. For me, that's where a lot of my passion and commitment to them was, originated. If I was having a hard time as a young child, and then the cat came by me, and there was that purr or the softness of their fur, it kind of interrupts that emotional turmoil or whatever it could be, or loneliness, right? Like if you're just feeling down, then that interaction with the animal, is bringing you back up, to a more neutral state. So that was very profound in learning about what is possible with working with animals.
And so I've been with you where you've even worked with me, and I'm new to animals and working specifically with horses. So, you taught me how to brush one, and then we did a little bit of kind of energy chakra work with one, and which was just so beautiful. So I know that's a way that you work, but could you speak to a little bit more like how you are expanding on working from an energetic standpoint with the animals?
So it's funny because what you do in your practice is pretty similar to what I do, just in the animal realm. So it really depends on what animal I have in front of me or what person I have in front of me. So if I have, someone who's looking to learn or connect in a certain way, then I might choose a certain animal. Or if an animal is drawn to someone. So it really is dependent on like how those people, that person and that animal are gravitating towards each other, or what
their chemistry and their
yes, and what they're wanting to learn, what type of experience they're wanting to have. So it's my job and my passion to be able to read people well enough to figure out how I can connect them, whether they own the animal or not, because I also have clients that, are coming to me with their animals, and that, like they're equestrians, they're in some sort of a sport, how can we communicate better? How come this isn't working? Well, my job is almost like a counselor or a therapist,
mediator of the animals
of like, well, hold on here. Like there's a disconnect in this communication, or like, how can, instead of, rushing into the barn and bypassing, that, taking that moment to like, okay, now I'm here with my horse. What can we get done? Like the beauty of working with animals is that you can't lie to them.
No,
you
can't hide it.
Hide it. Yeah. Correct. So it's very disarming, in a good way, in a trust building way. And, again, that sort of brings up why I became so committed to them, is that in a young age, I learned that, you know, if even your parents could disconnect from you, like anybody could, you know, like there was a lot of, you know, broken trust with humans, but animals are very honest. And so I felt like it was very safe for me to interact with them. And their actions are always congruent, right? Like humans can say something and it possibly not be true, or they can act a certain way and then behind closed doors they can act another way. But animals are always the same, which is just beautiful, that it just takes that whole element right out of the relationship, and you truly have to work with what's really there.
Brings you a really present moment. Yeah. I also would say that I agree with that 1,000,000%, but you have a very unique ability of being able to read the animals. So whereas they're probably being congruent, I think, you know, I've worked with you a little bit. We've worked with a horse. You tell me step this way, or the horse thinks you're doing this when you do this. So like, those are really natural cues that you know to look for and how to read, that might seem unpredictable to somebody else who doesn't know how to read them too. So I think that's just a gift of working with somebody like you that has all of that knowledge, right? Because I know from my own experience with you, there was times when if you weren't there explaining to me what was happening, I might have been more nervous than I was, or misunderstood something, or until I would have got to know. You would eventually, you know, the more I work with you, the more I would learn. But yeah.
Well, where that comes from, or can come from, at least, you know, for myself, like that came from trauma. That came from being a child and realizing that there were certain cues in the environment that could signal that things weren't safe.
Sense of hypervigilance that you had to.
Correct. So that can destroy you or make things very complicated for you. I feel like if animals hadn't come into my life, then I could have got stuck using those types of behaviors in not a great way, or letting them sit in me in not a great way. And instead, it gave me this ability, a constructive ability, to be like, okay, like how can I use this skill that I've unfortunately developed?
This oversensitivity, this empathic energy, whatever this is. Yes.
But like, how can I make it productive? How can I use it to actually read how to communicate well? And that's why when you're working with, you know, foster care kids or at-risk youth, and then they're working with animals, you know, unfortunately, frequently, they have those same similarities where they know to pay attention to very small energetic or physical cues. Well, they actually become really good at working with animals. Or because they see the safe cues and the slow movement and the honesty, they recognize that it's a safe interaction.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, so helpful on so many levels. So you have people both come to the ranch to work with the animals, and then you also do take the animals into the communities. Could you kind of explain a little bit about how you do each one?
The senior facility is more of an opportunity for basic petting, sharing of stories. One of my favorite ones was the time that I went to a senior facility. It was my first time ever. And I decided I didn't have a fancy, you know, well-trained dog or other animal to bring into a facility. But I did have a very cute duck. And so I wrapped it in a towel, you know, to make it, you know, safe, so its little feet and nails, and to keep everything clean. And so I had this duck with just its cute little head poking out in a towel. And I brought it through the senior facility, and you would not believe the stories.
Oh, I believe you. I'm laughing. I want the duck right now.
The stories that came about from seeing this silly duck, and the giggles from the very the cute movement and the small sounds that the duck makes. And it was just so funny that it wasn't like this was some fancy therapy duck. It was a duck that I wrangled, because it was kind, and wrapped it in a towel. And it was made this profound, experience for some of the residents. So I do love going to senior facilities and just seeing the smiles and, having their memory, jogged in that way. Preschoolers or any school education level is very fun. The preschoolers are very fun. Bringing simple animals in and then taking them down the line to pet and touch and all of the giggles. And, with the younger ones, I get to be a little more animated and goofy. And then with the older ones, I get to be a little more instructive. And then we are talking about energy dynamics, and we're talking about body language and how we are presenting. And so it really depends on what type of group I'm working with, how I will adjust. But it's just always a really fun adventure. And I'm always learning stuff too.
Yeah. And then you've over the years welcomed different groups. Like I know like my women's membership you would have, or I'm like a 4-H group or a club or something like that. There's always like, different ways. So I'm sure people will be like, can I come up? So I'm just throwing that out, that you do lots of things like that in those capacities.
Yeah.
And then you teach writing, and do one-on-one? What's the other things that you do at a one-on-one capacity?
Yeah. I have a writing program called From the Ground Up, and it literally is just that. From the basics on the ground, whether it's grooming or connecting, working with energy, round penning, just working with the horse on the line. I mean, there's a whole nother rabbit hole of fun stuff in that subject, all the way up to riding and competing. I also have clients that pay me to come take care of their horse at their house, ride, give instruction. So, it's a pinch me thing. I get to play with animals, for the nonprofit, but then I also am living my childhood fantasy, or something that I didn't even think, really, it's my adult fantasy. Like, I didn't even think as a child that I would ever get an opportunity for someone to pay me, to work with them and horses, or to ride and train, someone's horse. So I feel really blessed.
Yeah, it shows. So I'm flashing back to one of the days I was with you, and I think you had me round penning, and I was trying to do some things, and that donkey of yours got out. Do you remember?
Oh man!
And you had to go, and so it just makes me laugh, because we had a conversation around that with the unpredictableness, though, of having all these animals and all of these, who's going to do what at what time, or be well, or be sick, or need this, or do that, or who's going to interact with what. And I know you have this down very well, but there is, we're speaking to a lot of just the highlight reel, right, of like some of the things. So I mean, meanwhile, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Feeding all of these, all these animals, especially when the weather's bad or when it's too hot for them, and like you have to do extra care for them. Could you give us a little reality dose too of what this is like?
And I deeply appreciate that, because yes, it can look very glamorous. It can look, a bit like Yellowstone. Yeah. It can look like, she just gets to ride and play with horses.
Off into the sunset. Yes.
There is a lot of hard work and sacrifice. I don't get to just leave on a whim. There are many times that their needs come before mine. So there is definitely a very sobering reality to it. And that doesn't mean that it's not worth it. It just means that there's totally another side of the coin. There are days when it's very scary, like to pay the feed bill, or if somebody has a medical issue. Those are all stresses. The stresses of running a nonprofit. I do have a wonderful, team of volunteers, but everybody has lives, and, we're all doing this, the ranch is entirely unpaid staff and volunteers. Wow. So everything that comes into the org goes directly to the animals via care, food, facility. So, for a lot of us, we're still at the end of the day moms that are taking our kids to school. We are trying to respond to texts and emails and setting things up, cleaning the property, running, to the feed store. So there's a chaotic element to it that is very real. Animals get out. Half the time I'm feeding in my pajamas, like just running around like, we gotta go. The line about hay being in my hair is not a tagline. It's a very honest thing that I've had hay drop on the yoga mat, and I've been like, that's great. No one sees that.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you work really hard up there. So yeah, I know that that's true. And it's worth knowing.
But it's okay to be messy.
It's
like,
okay.
It is.
In fact, it's actually beautiful to, people I know that work on a farm, usually there's a therapeutic element too, to just like, I don't even know the terms for what you do, but cleaning up the barn, cleaning up things and doing things that you do. So yeah.
Oh, well, kind of what you're thinking is like a moving meditation.
Yes.
Of
yes. Very
mucking.
Much. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
Mucking. Yes.
You'd be surprised how many the volunteers or participants, their child is working with me, but then all of a sudden, like, on the next few sessions, like the mom's picked up a rake, and then they're like, I'll help out, I'll do a mini stall. And then before you know it, 3 stalls are clear and they're like leaving, and they're like, I feel so much better. Like, it's so weird how this is so relaxing. And yes, I think that it is a little bit of a moving meditation, but I also think it's the atmosphere of all of these animals that are moving so much slower, and they're just radiating happiness and health. And I try to work really hard to honor their needs as that animal. They get their times where they get to escape and run around the ranch if the front gates are closed. They get these nice spaces to live in. So they're not as upset as we are when we're in a vehicle in traffic or something like that. Like, the setting matters.
Oh, setting matters so much. Yeah. I love that. So how would somebody are you continually accepting volunteers, or how does that program work?
We usually start at like late spring, early summer. So right now we get our volunteers together with a new volunteer orientation. And then, hopefully we have more than enough help to get us through the hot days of summer and all of the programs. And then we keep running through the start of school all the way until Christmas. And then that's kind of when our season ends, is with our event, Country Christmas. So we have volunteers that are kind of year round, but we typically see a spike during summer when, people are into fall, when people are around and the weather is good.
Yeah. So we'll be releasing this right in the time frame of you be doing some of these things. So could you tell us what you're doing over the summer? Because I know you do have a lot of things coming up right now, correct?
Yes. Yeah. The ranch has standalone classes that people can sign up for, and the ages kind of range. So we try to put a little bit of something out for everyone. And we will also be scheduling a few more things as we kind of figure out how many volunteers that we are going to have on hand. So that will be posted on the website for the ranch.
Perfect. And we will put all of your social medias, all the things for the org and for your fitness and for the writing, all of the things. They'll be able to access you, and always encourage people to respond with questions directly on this podcast too, because we always love to have people back and just go through what we didn't cover too. So one of the things that I think we both relate to so much is the holistic approach to wholeness, to, we could call it healing, but I mean, just being a whole person and coming from the true capacity of who we are, right? I think you use the word essence, which I just love this word, but it's like, when you walk in a room, who are you and what do you feel? When you stand in your truth, what radiates? There's an exercise we do in yoga a lot that I do with people where, it comes from actually a yoga training I did years ago, and we got this t-shirt. I wish I still had the t-shirt, but it said, preach often and even sometimes use words.
I love that.
Right?
Love that.
So we do these like exercises where we stand for me, heart wide open, we stand, but then beyond heart wide open, it's if somebody was to look at you, like what would they see just by how you stand, right? Like who would they see? What would they feel? And I think that's when we say we're going to improve our health or whatever, it's not just I need to get more protein, even though that's a part of it, or it's I need to have more water, even though it's a part of it, or I need to move my body more, it's a part of it. It's like, what is the perfect recipe for each individual that allows them to step into radiance, vibration, full capacity? Now we're learning so much about like when you stand like that, your aura. I mean, really, the measuring tool used to think it was 3 feet out from either side of you. And then it was, well, they have a new measuring tool, so it turns out it's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now they have a measuring tool that goes like 15, 20. Mm-hmm. They just are out of measuring tools. Our vibration can be so big. And I think we gravitate to each other. And by we, I mean, I do mean you and I, because there's something special, but I also mean the we's that are open to doing that and to living in that sense of wholeness. Mm-hmm. We're aware that we're better off when we find each other because you can help me with this aspect of it and I can do this aspect of it, because you can't do all of this from just drinking water or doing a plank. You're not, I mean, right? So say more. Say on what comes up for you with this, because I know this is on your heart right now with really identifying that for you personally. And what do you think might open for you? And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I love your use of the word wholeness. Mm-hmm. And what I would add to that is kind of like creating that recipe for wholeness, which honestly, I think that could be almost summing up our life's journey is figuring out through meeting people, having experiences, life throwing us curveballs or taking us into different directions. And each time we're like adding something into that recipe, or we're getting this like piece that is creating wholeness in us. So for me, I hope that, when people come into contact with me, I hope that they're seeing somebody that isn't whole, but is somebody that's working on it, right, and that is open to it, and that is excited about whatever, I might be able to share or receive from the interactions that I'm having. I definitely don't sit here in any flawless capacity. We already covered, like, it's actually very messy and it's hard and it's a little chaotic. But over the past years, I've really learned how much importance that aspect of connection, and not just utilization of certain tools, like you said. I've been in the fitness, I grew up in the fitness industry. That doesn't necessarily mean that, myself or the people that I was with were flawlessly healthy. They were maybe physically fit, they maybe had great bodies, but that doesn't mean that they were healthy. Okay, well, I'm also in the nutrition world. Like, you can have your nutrition pretty dialed in, depending on the opinion, right? Yeah. And the methodology, but you can have like really great awareness and components of your nutrition, but are you healthy? No. Okay, well, let's at least combine those two, right? And that's a great, pathway.
Yeah, good catalyst to be healthy.
Yes, if you do have your fitness and nutrition, but even then, that doesn't mean you could be eating super well and moving your body, and you can still feel like something's missing, right?
And it could be missing.
And it could be missing. It probably is.
Right.
Like, we all have these, spaces that we're still developing to create that unique fullness that we're supposed to be bringing in to the world, or into our family, or our businesses, or whatever it is. So, so let's say, like, we've got our health or our fitness, we've got our nutrition. What would be the next component? Maybe therapy. Maybe somebody's in therapy. But even then, are they truly whole yet? Probably not. They're maybe a lot closer, right? But for example, what I love what you're doing is you're connecting it, you're bringing it into community. And I think I was like, had the components of a lot of things that were helping me heal, and they were bringing me closer to wholeness. And in the last year, I've just learned that it's the connection. It is getting all of those things that are good, but then blending them together. And you can't have those things, but then, have dysfunctional connections, or, keeping like people at an arm's length, or having inauthentic, aspects of your life. So the connection is really the key. And, why I put so much energy into animals is because I think that they're a great way to facilitate, learn from, honor those aspects of connection.
Well, it's like true connection. It's also teaching somebody who's having trouble possibly connecting to learn how to connect, to be like, become confident in their ability to connect. That it's like a training wheels to, I think therapy is very similar. Like, I like one-on-one therapy because it's sometimes critically necessary. Sometimes you really do just need the attention and the focus of being one-on-one. But after, once you work through whatever that is there, and that could take as long as it takes or as short as it takes. But then the next step is, how do you take that improvement into a relationship? How do you take that into your family? How do you take that into your community? And then this is why my work, which I think we're speaking to, it has improved in the way, and I think it is an improvement, where there's the blocks, there's individual, but then now there's group, and then there's a community that we're building, and then we're taking a community to go adventure together. And I just got back from Costa Rica, and I thought initially, my first retreat a few years ago, I led most of the things, and I had some people come in and do a thing here and there. This past retreat, I brought a sound healer, I brought a Reiki practitioner, I brought, an artist to do art therapy with us. And just in recognition that, to your point, it's not just this aspect. We need all of these aspects together to really do something. And it makes me so happy to know people that are open to this, because I think it's a little infectious right now. And I feel, do you feel like the uptick in, at least maybe it's just our worlds, I don't know, but it definitely feels like people are waking up to doing things together in a little different way.
I completely agree. I think that we as a society and as our smaller communities, we got very disconnected with our family units, with our immediate community. And then as it branches out, we got very disconnected, very distracted, disenfranchised. And that radiated into a lot of other areas. And so I think in this realization,
and more often than not positively.
Correct. And in this realization of like, whoa, like, let's recalibrate. And so I think the more people that can step forward and say like, look, we see this disconnect, but I'm willing to bare my heart to you. I'm willing to have an uncomfortable moment, or to go like, I don't know, but I'm willing to experience this with you. And then, then all of a sudden, now we are connecting. Now we are learning from each other. Now we are sharing. And every time we like pull in a little more, get stronger, but like then the energy just, explodes. And I do think that there's a big movement, within our small community and on a large scale.
Yeah.
But if, the small communities can work really hard, the bigger ones will all eventually come together too.
What would you say if somebody's listening and is resonating with what this topic of what we're talking about right now, but is also thinking like, how do I really do that in my life? Like, I'm thinking just because people want practical tips and tools, what would you suggest for them to tap into that?
What are you drawn to?
Yeah.
I loved I loved the way that you radiated friendliness, and that drew me into you. And then I start learning from you. And then what do? I adopt maybe some of those mannerisms or that verbiage or that perspective. And then now I'm doing it. And then somebody else sees that and was like, wait, I like that, you know? So I think, you know, for people to start listening to what feels good. Does this experience or that person make me not feel good? Or does that draw me in? And start listening to that inner voice, because that inner voice is going to tell you where your weak spots are, if you're willing to listen to it. You know, when those emotions are bubbling up, if you're brave enough to pay attention to that, which is hard.
And you do need to be brave.
Yes, which is very understandably hard. But if you're brave enough, and once you get to a point where you can, you know, face that, go for it, then you will start to find, I think, you know, where you can be pulled in a direction that you need to learn. You know, where those spots are is very different for all of us. But I think if we start paying attention to what we're feeling energetically, when our body is like, no, this doesn't feel good, versus that person feels like sunshine. Okay, face the sun.
Yes.
Face the sun.
Yes. And sometimes it's really hard because this person doesn't, right? And it doesn't make that person bad. It's just maybe not the right fit for you right now in this space in your life. So and sometimes that makes big changes in your life too. So it gets complicated quick.
Or
can get complicated quick. It doesn't have to. It could be really sunshiny too.
Yeah. Or maybe this is your call to action for you to be that sun. You know, there's been times when I've been working with a horse and they're shut down or afraid, and I'm like, okay, hold on. Like,
I could lead this. Yeah.
I need to be the leader here. Or sometimes I'll learn something of, like, let's say I'm impatient because a horse is not doing what I want it to do. And then I have to, like, check myself, like, wait, hold on. Am I being impatient here? And then oddly enough, I'll have a human interaction and I'll realize, like, oh, this person is that kind of horse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like, how can I show up? And what I've learned with this horse, how can I show up and help this person similarly?
It's beautiful.
You know, like, you learn in, like, safer situations, and you kind of, like, get that skill set or that experience, and then you apply it somewhere else. And so but
that's the key. You got to apply it and you got to listen.
Yes. Which is why we're all on a journey. And we all need help. Yeah. And we all need connection and to learn from each other, because not everybody has everything.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you kind of just circled around it, but we're coming to the end, and I have to ask you, like, how do you stay open in that process? How do, all my company, they're called Heart Wide Open. So how do you live? And what does that mean to you to live with your heart wide open?
Yes, I did circle around it. Paying attention to what is surfacing, both internally and externally in my life, and not shying away from what is hard or unknown or uncomfortable, and recognizing where I can radiate into or contribute, where my heart can be a little stronger and help out. So being open to whatever is going to come about.
I love that.
Just living ready and wanting to live with love and love others. We're supposed to be in fellowship, and we're supposed to love others, and we're supposed to help others. So for me, that's living with my heart wide open.
Well said. That's a perfect ending. Thank you so much. As always, it's just so much fun to be with you every single time.
Oh, thank you for having me, and we'll have to get you back up to the ranch.
Yes, very soon. Thank you, everyone, and definitely check out all the places where you can find Kate. She'll continue to keep that updated for things for this summer and for ongoing opportunities, depending on whenever you're listening to us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. We appreciate your time, energy, and attention. Whether you're watching or listening, please remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Stay up to date with us at heartwideopenwellness.com so you don't miss any upcoming events, offerings, or retreats. Until next time, keep your heart wide open.